The war across the Pacific and Europe was a war of vast distances. Allied forces, stretched thin across the globe, needed a constant supply of fuel, food, and ammunition. But there was another, invisible and critically important cargo threatening to overwhelm the already strained transport lines: mail. Every week, millions of soldiers wrote letters home, and millions of families wrote back. This correspondence, the very lifeblood of military morale, traveled in massive bags, consuming tons of precious cargo space on planes and ships. Every sack filled with letters meant less room for shells, medical supplies, or vital engine parts to reach the front lines. Ultimately, the battle for mail became a battle for space. Commanders needed a way to deliver millions of words, but not tons of paper. The solution arrived in the form of an elegant hybrid, combining traditional correspondence with microfilm technology. This was the Vmail Victory Mail system. Instead of shipping millions of paper letters weighing dozens of tons, they were photographed, reduced to the size of microfilm, and then shipped in tiny canisters. Just one canister could hold the mail that previously filled an entire sack. Vmail is the story of how engineering ingenuity and photography conquered a logistical nightmare. It was a technology that didn't fire or fly, but by radically shrinking weight and volume, it freed up the space needed for the weapons that ultimately won the war. This is the detailed, 40-part triumph of Vmail, the unsung hero of the logistics war. If you are fascinated by the untold stories of engineering triumphs and logistical brilliance, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, give this video a like, and share your thoughts on Vmail in the comments below. By 1943, the morale of the deployed soldier, the lifeblood of the military, was directly tied to the supply chain. Every week, millions of Allied servicemen wrote home and their families wrote back. This flood of correspondence, carried in huge canvas bags, quickly became a logistical nightmare. A single U.S. Army division could generate several tons of paper mail per month. Transporting this massive volume of paper required prioritizing cargo space on ships and, critically, on transoceanic aircraft. Paper was effectively robbing space from bullets, bombs, and blood plasma. This was the mail tsunami, a silent, non-combat obstacle threatening to choke the entire war effort. The strategic importance of cargo space during World War II cannot be overstated. Every single cubic foot and every pound on a transport ship or cargo plane was meticulously accounted for. From the D-Day landings to the island-hopping campaigns in the Pacific, the success of military operations hinged on the continuous, efficient flow of supplies. To allocate a significant portion of this precious, finite space to bulky paper mail meant actively sacrificing vital war material. The military was faced with a stark choice: maintain morale with traditional mail or fight the war effectively. Traditional mail, while deeply personal, was fundamentally inefficient for wartime logistics. An average letter, even on thin paper, accumulated significant weight when multiplied by millions. Its three-dimensional nature meant volume was also a major issue. Bags of mail were difficult to stack efficiently, leaving dead space. Furthermore, the paper was vulnerable to water damage, fire, and pests, requiring robust, heavy packaging, which only added to the problem. The very medium of communication was becoming a logistical liability. Before Vmail, the fastest way to get mail to and from the front was via traditional airmail. While faster than sea mail, this was still fundamentally the same bulky paper. Airmail was expensive and, more importantly, severely limited by the cargo capacity of early military transport aircraft. A single large bomber, repurposed for cargo, could only carry so many mail sacks before it hit its weight or volume limit. A truly effective solution required a radical reimagining of the mail itself, not just its mode of transport. Beyond the physical burden, the slowness of traditional mail was a huge psychological strain. Letters could take weeks, even months, to cross oceans, leading to heartbreaking delays. News from home arrived tragically late, or, conversely, news of a soldier's fate reached home long before their final letters. This disconnect eroded morale, fostering anxiety and a sense of isolation among the troop. Commanders understood that a soldier's fighting spirit was intrinsically linked to their family connection, making reliable and timely communication a strategic imperative. The concept of filming and reducing documents was not new. It was an invention perfected decades before the war. The key technology had been developed in the 1920s by the Eastman Kodak Company for the banking sector. Banks used large, specialized cameras to quickly photograph every check that passed through the system. This practice, known as recordac in the U.S., allowed banks to create permanent, tamper-proof, and space-saving records of millions of transactions. This established a proven, large-scale system for reliable document reduction, which the military would later adapt. The role of George Eastman's Kodak Company was pivotal. Kodak possessed not only the camera technology, recordac machines, but also the industrial capacity to produce the massive quantities of specialized, high-resolution film required for Vmail. When the U.S. government approached the firm, Kodak quickly adapted its commercial machinery into robust, military-grade processing units capable of operating 24 hours a day in varying climates, from humid jungles to freezing European centers. Their commitment was crucial to scaling the microphotography solution. The Vmail system was not originally an American idea. It was a refinement of a British concept called Airgraph. The British, facing even more severe supply chain disruptions across their vast empire, especially to the Middle East and India, launched Airgraph in 1941. Airgraph used a similar microfilm process. The U.S. military observed the system's success in boosting morale and relieving cargo space, leading to the decision to adopt and massively expand the technology for American forces, renaming it Vmail. A crucial element of the Vmail system was the standardization of the letter form. Every soldier and civilian had to use a specific, light blue, single-sheet form. This wasn't arbitrary. The forms were designed with precise dimensions and non-reflective paper quality to ensure optimal results under the Vmail camera lenses. The standardized size, approximate 8.5 by 11 inches, allowed for consistent reduction ratios onto the 16 mm or 35 mm film, ensuring quality control and maximizing the number of letters per roll. The Vmail process settled on a specific reduction ratio, approximately 1/4 of the original size. This ratio was a carefully calculated compromise. While engineers could have reduced the letters further to save even more space, a 1/4 reduction, meaning the final print was 1/4 the size of the original paper, maintained legibility. This balance between maximum space savings and guaranteed readability was a critical technical standard that ensured the system was both logistically efficient and emotionally effective for the recipient. To manage the unprecedented volume, the military established huge, industrial-scale processing centers. On the U.S. side, these Vmail hubs were concentrated in major port cities like New York, San Francisco, and Chicago. These nerve centers received millions of forms, where hundreds of employees, mostly women, worked around the clock. The centers were critical because they housed the expensive, dedicated Kodak recordac cameras and film developers. These hubs were responsible for the precise, mass-scale transcription of handwritten words into microscopic photographic data, ensuring consistency and speed before the film could be shipped overseas. The Vmail system offered a massive logistical advantage to military censors. Before filming, every Vmail form had to be screened. If a censor found sensitive information, the letter was discarded and never filmed. However, the uniformity of the Vmail form meant that censors did not have to handle oddly sized envelopes and sheets. They worked with a standardized document on a continuous assembly line. Furthermore, because the Vmail system was officially sanctioned, it psychologically encouraged senders to self-censor, further streamlining the entire, tedious process of war correspondence review. At the destination hub, be it London, Algiers, or Sydney. The microfilm was developed, and each tiny frame was fed through an enlarger printer. The result was the final Vmail print, a small, black-and-white photographic print, roughly 1/4 the size of the original handwritten form. This miniature letter, though impersonal in texture, represented a lightning-fast connection to home. These prints were then trimmed, machine-folded, and placed into a final envelope for delivery. Despite the change in format, these small prints quickly became treasured keepsakes, often carefully preserved by families long after the war. Once filmed and packaged into small metal canisters, the Vmail film was given extreme priority on cargo manifests. Unlike regular mail, which might be bumped for urgent material, the Vmail canister was deemed critical to morale. These canisters would travel alongside urgent engine parts, blood plasma, or high-priority military personnel on the fastest available transport, usually long-range, high-speed cargo aircraft. This logistical prioritization meant Vmail could often cross oceans in a matter of days, delivering news weeks faster than traditional sea mail. Despite its efficiency, Vmail carried one catastrophic risk: the concentration of failure. When a bag of regular paper mail was lost or damaged, only the letters in that bag were affected. If a single roll of Vmail microfilm was lost due to a plane crash, a shipping incident, or a technical failure during development, it meant the instantaneous loss of thousands of individual, personal letters. A small black spot of mold or a scratch on the film roll could destroy a month's worth of communication for an entire unit, representing the tragic, concentrated human cost of this logistical efficiency. To ensure the high speed and high quality capture of millions of letters, standard commercial cameras were insufficient. Kodak developed a specialized piece of equipment often called the Vmail camera unit. This machine was a precision instrument built for industrial volume. It featured automatic feeding, specialized lighting to eliminate glare and shadows from the paper, and a rapid shutter mechanism. The camera had to be incredibly stable and precisely calibrated to maintain the necessary 1/4 reduction ratio consistently, effectively turning a photography studio into a mass-production factory. One of the greatest human factor challenges was dealing with the vast array of handwriting styles. The system had to successfully photograph everything from neat cursive to hurried, almost illegible scrawl. The paper form's light blue grid and specific ink regulations were intended to help standardize input, but the final burden fell on the cameras. Operators had to constantly adjust exposure and focus to ensure maximum clarity on the final microfilm, knowing that a blurry image meant a totally unreadable, and thus lost, message for the recipient. The photographic film itself became a critical supply item with unique logistical problems. Rolls of Vmail film had to maintain their integrity while being transported through extreme environments, from the high humidity of Pacific Island bases to the intense heat of North Africa. Film degrades rapidly under such conditions. This necessitated specialized, airtight, and often temperature-controlled metal canisters for transport. The military realized that failure to protect the film meant the collective loss of thousands of letters, treating the film rolls as precious, perishable cargo. Initial reactions from soldiers and their families to the small, photographic prints were mixed. Some found the miniature, impersonal nature of the Vmail print cold and lacking the feel of real paper. However, this sentiment was quickly outweighed by the sheer speed and reliability of the delivery. A soldier would rather receive a tiny, quarter-sized print in 2 weeks than a full-size letter in 2 months. The reliability of Vmail became a huge morale boost, and the small prints, despite their format, became physical evidence of the military's commitment to keeping communication lines open. Censorship was integral to the Vmail process, and the system gave censors a powerful, final tool. If a censor found a sensitive passage in the handwritten letter, they didn't have to painstakingly redact the line with ink. They simply blacked out the offending section on the original Vmail form before it was filmed. When the letter was photographed, this deletion became a solid, indelible black spot on the microfilm and, subsequently, a blank black rectangle on the final printed letter. This digital age delete feature was swift, final, and psychologically potent, serving as a constant reminder to the writer that the message was monitored. The sheer scale of the Vmail operation during the war is difficult to comprehend. By the end of World War II, an estimated over 1 billion individual Vmail letters had been processed and delivered. On peak days, the processing centers handled over 1 million letters daily. This massive volume was proof that the system wasn't a novelty. It was the primary method of communication between the front lines and the home front, fundamentally defining the postal traffic of a global conflict. The most significant quantifiable achievement of the Vmail system was the massive amount of cargo space it liberated. It is estimated that Vmail reduced the physical volume of military mail by approximately 98%. Over the course of the war, this massive reduction freed up thousands of cubic feet of cargo space, which was immediately used to transport high-priority combat supplies, fuel, and medical equipment. The Vmail system didn't just save space. It was a direct contributor to the Allies' ability to sustain and advance their global operations. The Vmail system was heavily reliant on the civilian workforce, which operated the complex machinery in the processing hubs. Hundreds of women, often referred to as Vmail girls, were the primary operators of the Kodak cameras and developing equipment. They had to work with speed and meticulous precision, often under high-stress conditions, to film and develop letters containing potentially life-altering news. Their non-combat, industrial contribution was crucial to the psychological well-being of the troops and the overall success of the logistical effort. While the military often focused on getting soldiers' mail home, Vmail was equally vital for delivering letters to the soldiers overseas. Receiving a Vmail from home was often the only consistent personal connection a soldier had. The predictable and fast delivery schedule meant soldiers could write a letter, knowing they would receive a response within a reasonable time frame. This continuity was a powerful antidote to the isolation and monotony of combat life, ensuring that the morale supply chain flowed effectively in both directions. The Vmail system was not cheap. The initial investment in the highly specialized Kodak Recordac cameras, the continuous supply of high-grade film and paper, and the staffing of the numerous processing centers constituted a significant financial outlay. However, the military viewed this cost not as an expense, but as a necessary wartime investment. When weighed against the cost of delays in critical supplies, the cost of lost battles due to low morale, and the cost of transporting traditional paper, the efficiency gains of Vmail proved the system to be one of the most cost-effective logistical moves of the entire war. Once the Vmail forms were successfully microfilmed, the question arose, what happened to the original paper letters? For security and logistical reasons, the original paper forms were generally destroyed shortly after filming, though some were stored for a limited period. This meant that the microfilm, and subsequently the quarter-sized print, became the only surviving record of the letter. This policy, while efficient, severed the physical connection to the original handwritten message, a detail that was sometimes difficult for families to accept. Even after printing, the final leg of the Vmail journey, delivery to the individual soldier, presented its own set of challenges. In the chaos of the front lines, units were constantly moving, and addresses could change overnight. Vmail prints, now on small, flimsy paper, were delivered via traditional military mail carriers, often to makeshift mailrooms in tents or bunkers. The final delivery relied heavily on the diligence of postal sergeants and the accuracy of forwarding addresses, making the last mile a critical, often vulnerable, link in the Vmail chain. The small, black and white Vmail prints were essentially photographic paper, and as such, they were susceptible to fading, discoloration, and damage over time. Unlike robust, archival-quality paper, these prints were not designed for longevity. Many families, however, treasured these letters deeply, preserving them in albums or special boxes. Despite their fragility, These prints represent a unique and tangible piece of wartime communication, a testament to the emotional value placed on these miniature messages from afar. As the war drew to a close and troops began to demobilize, the Vmail system rapidly became obsolete. The immediate post-war period saw the return of traditional, full-size mail. The logistical pressures that necessitated Vmail vanished as cargo planes and ships were no longer needed for combat supplies, and shipping lanes normalized. The sophisticated Vmail cameras and processing equipment were gradually decommissioned or repurposed, marking the quiet end of a groundbreaking wartime innovation. While Vmail as a postal system ended, the underlying microfilm technology continued to thrive. The techniques perfected during Vmail, high-speed document reduction, secure storage, and efficient retrieval, became cornerstones of archival science. Governments, libraries, and businesses adopted microfilm for long-term document preservation, recognizing its incredible space-saving and durability benefit. The Vmail project, though temporary, had permanently advanced the field of micrographics, leaving an enduring legacy in how we preserve and access historical record. Vmail's greatest impact wasn't measured in tons saved, but in moral sustained. For a soldier facing the constant threat of combat, receiving a letter from home was an immediate, powerful antidote to the profound sense of isolation. The speed of Vmail dramatically reduced the time between asking a question and receiving an answer, creating a near real-time emotional feedback loop. This consistent connection served as a vital psychological anchor, reminding the troops what they were fighting for. For families back home, the Vmail process was a personal act of sacrifice and contribution. The small, designated forms were a constant, daily reminder of the war and the distance separating them from their loved ones. Writing on the confined space of the Vmail form required brevity and focus, forcing writers to prioritize core feelings and essential news. The system symbolized their participation in the war effort, submitting their private words to the military machine for the greater logistical good. The clear evidence of censorship, the inevitable black spots on the final Vmail prints, had a deep psychological effect on both the sender and the recipient. It served as a constant reminder that their private thoughts and details were being scrutinized by the state. While most understood the necessity of security, the presence of the black spot often led to anxiety and speculation about what the deleted text contained, underscoring the tension between necessary security and personal privacy during wartime. The Vmail system was not only a logistical tool but also a highly effective propaganda instrument. The government actively promoted Vmail to the public, showcasing the process in newsreels and posters to encourage participation. This promotion framed the act of writing Vmail as a patriotic duty, directly linking the civilian's effort, writing the letter, to the soldier's well-being and the war's eventual victory. It visually and emotionally connected the home front's sacrifice with the front line's bravery. Vmail's distinctive format and function quickly embedded itself into American popular culture. It was referenced in films, cartoons, and, most notably, in music. Songs like Vmail romanticized the idea of shrinking love across the ocean, celebrating the technology as a symbol of hope and enduring connection. By entering the cultural lexicon, Vmail became more than a postal service. It became a recognized, cherished symbol of wartime separation and fidelity. Vmail proved its superiority in speed and efficiency compared to other military postal systems. Regular sea mail was cheap but slow and bulky. Traditional air mail was faster but still costly in terms of weight allocation. Vmail, on the other hand, offered the speed of air mail at minimal bulk and weight. This confirmed a fundamental logistical lesson. The speed of information delivery relies on its physical reduction, not merely the velocity of the transport vehicle. The Vmail project became a logistical blueprint for managing critical yet cumbersome non-combat cargo. It demonstrated how centralized, high-tech processing could free up frontline resources. Post-war, the military applied this reduction philosophy to cartography, blueprints, and other vital documents, using microfilm to create portable, backup copies of data, which was especially important in the early computer age. Vmail was a precursor to our modern way of thinking about information. It was one of the first mass systems that taught millions of people that the physical carrier, paper, is less important than the informational content. The conversion of a personal handwritten letter into a black and white photographic print trained the public to value the bits and bytes of a message over its form, laying the cultural groundwork for the acceptance of later digital and electronic communications. Unlike aircraft designers, Kodak and the hundreds of civilian operators, the Vmail girls, remain the unsung heroes of this story. Their success hinged on reliability, repeatability, and precision. Vmail is a prime example of how the private sector, the photographic industry, could rapidly and effectively apply commercial technology to solve a national crisis through engineering ingenuity, not just military force. The Vmail story is more than just a tale of paper replaced by film. It is a story of how a psychological imperative, maintaining morale, was met through logistical necessity, saving cargo. By shrinking millions of words into tiny, sub-5-pound canisters, the Vmail system freed the space needed to win critical battles. It became a miniature symbol of American ingenuity that shrank distance and weight to win the logistical war.